Good morning, guys. I hope you're well. You are back on my channel. This is an unusual morning show. I've got a live show this morning with a good friend of mine here in Yorkshire, and we're having a cup of tea online, and we're going to be talking about messages from the other side. And who I've got for you today, who is joining me, here we are, Jonathan Halstead. Hello, Jonathan.
Good morning, Nat.
Good morning. There we are. We're having a cup of tea together. It's quite nice.
Yeah, cheers.
Yeah, cheers. There you go. It's the Yorkshire thing. I've got a big fat mug of fresh chai that I'll be drinking throughout the show. So. But yeah, so good morning, basically. I was just about to introduce you. Jonathan is a fantastic visionary. He is a spiritualist. He gets through all sorts of information from the other side. Very grounded, very practical, very Yorkshire-esque. And I've had the pleasure of meeting Jonathan. I actually got in touch with Jonathan because when I did an interview with Mark Devlin on YouTube, which some of you may have seen before, I did an interview with Mark, and then I was showing my friend the interview, and then I listened to the next one, and it was it was the week before, wasn't it, with you? And I was like, oh my god, I need to interview this guy too. So I reached out, and then I ended up coming for a reading, which I might say was very good. I was very, very happy, and you just really knew quite a lot of stuff. Obviously it's your job too, and you nailed it with me on a few things, one of which I haven't actually told you this, but one of which I have to thank you for. So you told me that there would be some stars that I have to follow on the 21st, and I was a bit like, where's that going to be? It's a bit like, crazy journey, and when I was traveling down to Devon, I started seeing loads of stars in random places, and I ended up getting all these messages myself, and ended up being on the beach in Paynton at 5 to midnight on that night, which you said I had to be somewhere at midnight. And I took my shoes and socks off, and I put my feet on the ground on the beach for the first time in 29 years, back in Devon. And I had this chill everywhere. And this track that came on my phone was Full Circle. And that was the first time that I'd been on that, Devon soil since I'd moved away from there in all of that time. And I cried, and it just felt like home. And I was like, I know I need to be here. So I actually went back to my parents and said, hey, do you fancy moving to Devon? Because I'm living with it at the moment. Do you fancy moving back to Devon? And they said, yeah. So the house is up for sale and we're moving.
Oh, wonderful.
So we're off on an adventure. And you started that little one off there.
Oh, well, I can't always take credit for it, I'm the messenger. I call myself a messenger, yeah. But that's wonderful. Lovely to hear that.
I'm very, very happy. But we'll be far away from you in Huddersfield, so we're going to have to come and see you before we depart, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And hopefully when we've got the centre back open, you can pop in and we'll have another brew.
Amazing. So I wanted to talk to you and kind of give you a space to have this conversation and to, show people what you do. And because a lot of people now, spiritually, a lot of people are waking up. A lot of people are connecting and finding information coming to them about other realms and other places and other things going on the planet that they didn't necessarily knew existed, or had always maybe even taken the piss out of. Quite a lot of people who kind of get these messages are some of the strongest critics and skeptics. And what I wanted to put across, because we're going to go into kind of more of your story, is that if you are receiving messages, or you are having things happen to you that are unexplainable, or you're a bit like, what the hell's going on? My friend has got messages and I don't understand what she's talking about, or my partner has. This is going to help you to understand a little bit more about what's happening. And I don't believe necessarily it's anything to be frightened of. It's definitely possible. I've had it myself, which I won't go into my story yet. We'll explain that later. But yeah, I wanted to give you this opportunity to tell us more about your initial interactions with the other side, what that was like, and how it kind of began for you.
Yeah, certainly, Nat. It was completely out of the blue. Before I kind of start on that track, just to give you a little bit of further background of my life up to that point, I'd always been brought up in fairly religious circles. In my generation, Sunday school was a big thing, so I would have gone to Sunday school. I went to a C of E, Church of England school, junior school. As schools progressed, that kind of, the religious aspect of it faded. But when I was about five, my parents got into the Jehovah's Witnesses. And I, about the age of 7 or 8, they came out of that. And in my teen years, that really kind of set me on this track of battling. I'll call it a battle with God, really. Sounds a bit dramatic, but that's
Sounds
what
like
it
what
felt.
we're going through right now at the moment.
Well, I mean, we'd never stop battling, honestly, but we're always in this spiritual war thing, and none more so than now, you know. But I really struggled with the teachings of the Bible in many respects. Some of it I absolutely uphold as truth to this day, but other parts of it where, you know, Paul was talking about women having to wear veils and things like that, and men having to wear hats and things, and I just couldn't resonate with that. I'm not being disrespectful to anybody's religion, because religion is a pathway to spirituality. To the truth. We're all in some way on that pathway, of course. And I battled with that, and it just did not make sense. And I kind of forgot about it for many years. Got married, and then the real kind of time came for me. The spiritual awakening came for me was my mother-in-law passed away very suddenly one Christmas. That was 1994, and my wife said to me after her passing that could I take her to a spiritualist church, and I was a salesman at the time, and I'd done a bit of travelling around West Yorkshire, and this little image popped into my mind of Brighouse, and there's this church in Brighouse, and I said, yeah, I think there's one in Brighouse. She says, well, will you take me? I said, yeah, go on then. I'm intrigued. You know, I've always been interested in ghosts and things like that, and science fiction and Loch Ness monsters and that kind of stuff, you know. And so we did, and we went. And the very first night that we went, she was expecting to get a message from her mum. She thought she could walk into any spiritualist church and the medium would come directly to her. We now know that that's not the way that it works, but she didn't know then, neither did I. I ended up getting a message that evening, and it was always, can we speak to the gentleman at the back with the beard? Because I always sat on the back row, and I put my head under head radar, so I'd slink into my chair so I didn't get picked on. And this went on for weeks. Honestly, it went on for weeks. Now it was like it was becoming embarrassing. My wife was getting more and more upset by it because she wasn't getting a message from her mum. And I was becoming more and more intrigued by it, because every week I was getting this message. And, you know, eventually a medium came to me and said, oh, and by the way, she said, this was the parting shot from her message that she was giving one evening. She says, you're going to be up here working with them. And she pointed like that with her thumb. And I thought, oh, my God, what does that mean? Does that mean I'm going to die? I honestly thought that she said I was going to die and go to spirit and be working in the spirit world. And we didn't really talk about it much until the week after. And we spoke to the lady who ran the church, and she kind of said, oh, Jonathan, you silly Billy. She says, you've got that completely wrong. She says, she meant you're going to become a medium. So that was all kind of news to me, you know. And it was like the whatever thing, you know, and kind of walked away. And anyway, probably
I forgot about that whatever that you used to do.
Yeah. Where's that come from? What have I done that for? I never used that.
That was what we used to do as kids.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. Yeah, whatever.
Perhaps I've got spirit children with me or something. I don't know. I'll find out anyway if I have. But
if anything comes through, just bring it. Let's bring it.
But so I'm on this kind of, you know, all this kind of stuff going on in my brain. And then one night we went to the church. It's always on a Wednesday, by the way. And it's a lovely church, it's Brighouse, by the way. If you're getting into that kind of thing and you want to know more, please do visit Brighouse. It's a wonderful church run by two wonderful ladies. And so we went, and the worst happened, and the speaker for that evening who was booked hadn't turned up. So there was a little bit of shuffling and muffled speech going on in the background. And then the lady who ran the church, lovely lady called Margaret, said, stood up at the front. And honestly, you wouldn't mess with Margaret, by the way. She was only very petite, but my giddy aunt, you wouldn't mess with Margaret. And Margaret stood up at the front of the church and said, right, everybody in this church tonight is going to give a message. Okay, so we're thinking, oh, yeah, you know, I don't think so. And all these thoughts going through your brain. And the church went very quiet. And I think a couple of people stood up and gave something. And then I got this little tickle in my ear, and I felt a name. I could hear a name coming into my ear. And I whispered very quietly to my wife, and I said, I've got a name. And she threw a hand up like that. You probably can't see it on the screen, but she threw a hand up, okay. And I looked at her with a look of shock horror. And yeah, exactly. It's like, you know, and then Margaret said, yes, the lady, can you please stand up and give your message? And Anne said, no, it's not me, it's him, and pointed to me. And literally now, I'll never forget this as long as I live, and I say this to many people, I was trying to think of any excuse not to stand up and make myself look like an idiot. And it was as if somebody or something got hold of my collar and lifted me up out of my chair, and I found myself standing on my feet. And this message came out about this guy, and he had his shed in the back of his garden, and he loved his woodwork, and his hobby was to do woodwork. And I started planing with my hands like this, like I had a plane in my hands. And then I sat down. It all went a bit weird and a bit quiet. And then I went home, and that night, normally my head hits the pillow, I'm out. And Anne's usually up reading a book or something. That night, I couldn't get to sleep. I had this mumble in my head, this murmur in my head, and I couldn't get rid of it. And I thought the next door neighbours had left the telly on. And I looked outside, I thought, have I left my radio on in the car, you know? And all these things going through my head. I checked downstairs, nothing. And then I suddenly thought, I wonder if this is spirit. And I looked at the clock, and it said 3 a.m. And I thought, oh, I've got to get up. You know, I've got to get up for work. You know, I can't be doing with this. How long is this going to go on for? And I thought, is this going to go on for the rest of my life? Is it a bit like a tinnitus thing or something that I'm not going to be able to get rid of? So I thought, you know what? I'll give it a go. And I said in my mind, will you all just shut up? And it just went completely quiet. And I put my head under the covers that night, and I just kind of went to sleep. So that's how it started for me, by the way. I was 30 years old. I had no inkling that was coming. It just came out like a bolt out of the blue.
Yeah. And it's a very unusual feeling. And it's like and I've had it myself. And, you know, I did everything in my mind to be like, this can't be true. This can't be happening. What on earth is going on? And I had mine like doubly confirmed by someone else. And there was so many, you know, things happening. And I was just like, this doesn't make sense. And it makes you challenge and question your sanity, because you're just like, oh God, like, who do I tell? And I remember when I got home I started doing Reiki and on someone, and it was my first ever session on someone, which I wasn't meant to do. It was a long story short, but these messages had come through from the woman's husband, and they were coming through me, and I gave them to her, and I'd broken down crying, being like, where is all this information coming from? I came home and told my dad, and my dad was just like, I was like, yeah, that kind of sounds normal. I'm like, that's not normal. Someone's dead and they've come through me and spoke to someone. And he was just like really blasé. I came and sat on the bed in the other room in here. I sat on the bed and I put my head down, and I'm just like, what is going on? And I shit you not, someone sat next to me. It was on this side. Someone sat next to me on the bed, and I looked, there's no one there. I can feel the bed go down. And literally this guy who named himself Ian, who was the husband, and just literally came through and said, hi, Nat, it's me, Ian. I want you to write a letter for me. Get your laptop out. You'll be okay. And I was just like, frozen, just like, what the hell is this? And like, I won't go into the rest because we're going to talk about you today, but I get that feeling, and it's so unusual because you're like, and you know, something's there. You get it. You can't deny it. You can't get away from it. You've now tapped into something. So now your life is on a different path, and now you're going somewhere else. But it's, how long did it take you to adopt from the moment, obviously from the morning after you woke up there? Was there a period of disbelief? Was there like this period of like, oh gosh, should I be doing it? Should I tell anyone? Or is it pretty like switched on for you, and that was it? Off you went?
There was definitely a period of getting used to it, adjusting to it. Because the morning after, again, I vividly remember it, thinking like my world's never going to be the same anymore, you know? And something happened there that is now completely new. And I would speak to mediums, or mediums would speak to me, And I remember one medium saying, because I'm a person who doesn't handle authority very well, and hence the reason why I'm
Yorkshire thing.
Yeah, hence the reason I'm self-employed, because it's like, you know, I've got to run my own life and do my own thing. That's so I don't commit violence against anybody else, by the way. Not that I'm a violent person, but it was definitely a case. And a medium came to me and said, "Oh, you know, spirit will take you where they need you to go." And I thought, no, you can stuff off to that. Honestly, I'll do what I want, and I don't care what spirit think. And the issue there that I had was I didn't understand what she'd said correctly until a good while after. And it's very true. And it's finding yourself in a place where you need to be. Okay. And anybody who works on a spiritual vibration will understand that message, that we are where we are meant to be. You know, right here, right now is where I'm meant to be, where you're meant to be now. This is what we were kind of destined to do. So it took me a while. The other issue I had was I had a big issue when I started doing private readings, was taking money for them. And that's where the skeptics jump on people, you know, oh, you're charging for this service. And I just say to these people, what do you do for a living? How do you earn your money? You know? And my guide came through to me one day and said, you live in a world where you need money. And that kind of said it all for me, really. We've all got to, we give our time, you know, to someone, and they pay us for that time. And at the end of the day, as you probably well know, now money is just an energy exchange, and that's all that it is. One day we will live in a world where we don't need it anymore.
Yes.
And we know that from our cosmic families, that they've learned to overcome the monetary system. So we know that it's coming, it will come. But yeah, there was definitely an adjustment period. And I went into development through then what is, well, still is the Spiritualist National Union, with a lovely lady called Nora Stringer. And she was very kind of firm, but I learned a lot from Nora, and she would take me to all these different churches and put me on the platform along with her, and she would be sitting down, and eventually I was up there doing it for myself rather than relying on somebody else. So that was the start of the journey for me, but that literally was the very smallest part of the journey.
Mm-hmm. So there's different types of clairvoyancy, shall we say. So clairvoyance, there's clairaudient, clairsentient, and clairvoyance. And clairvoyance, if I'm right, is visionary. Clairaudient is where you hear messages. So some people see messages and see different pictures. Some people who are clairaudient hear. I'm clairsentient. I know, and I don't know why I know or where I know. It comes out of my mouth, and I'm like, oh, I know that, and I have no idea. It's something I'll have never learned, never been to a place I don't understand, a family I've never met. It'll just come out, and people are like, how do you know that? And I'm like, I don't know. And it's so when you hear something, I've spoke to a lot of like readers and stuff before. When you hear something, it's very succinct, and you're like, okay, this is definitely. When you see something, you've got that. When you just know, and there's no sensory experience, it's even harder to accept as yourself, because you know, somebody, what does she know? It's like, well, actually I do, you know. It's like, I do, but I don't know how I could tell you. I never know. You know, I would be some people would assume that I would not know because I'd not been, or how could I? And they would doubt me as much as I would doubt myself as well, which was really difficult for me, because I, you know, and I didn't want to share it, should I say, in a way. So I did very similar to what you did, and I didn't ask them to stop in like, can we just stop with the noise, because I wasn't hearing anything. But in a space of a week, I started getting loads of different things coming through, and I would just get this like knowing in my head, pick up your iPhone, open the notes and start typing, and then something would come through, and it'd be somebody that died or somebody had come through, and I start typing things, and then I'd read the messages back, and the messages would be in the accents, and when I'd be reading it back, it'd be in the accents and the kind of a bit like the language and the personality of the person that had come through. So the first time someone came in, it was a young guy from North London that had a motorbike crash that was my friend's son's friend. And I'd never met him, but he came through with a story for me to find out if it was true in this world, because then that would know that the connection was right. But when I wrote, it was very kind of North London accent as I'm writing and reading it back. And I was like, what was it? It was like I've got these impersonations in me, and I was like, what is that? And it was very strange. But I get very, I mean, I've done a reading with you, and you don't get as, I think actually you did cry a little bit when you did my reading, and I cried, but like I get very overwhelmed by you. What, sorry?
I'm a Yorkshire bloke. Don't tell people I cry in readings.
He did not cry. He was a standout gentleman, don't worry. But it's a very emotional process for me, and I get these messages and they're so overwhelming. And they're so kind of heartfelt, and they feel like they're too much for me. And I'm trying to put them into a word, into a thing on an iPhone or whatever. And it just doesn't, it just, for me, it was too much. So I read this book, and this woman said, you can ask them to stop until you're ready. So I did this little ceremony and sat in the mirror, and I'm like, I can't do this. This is not my bag. I am not ready for this. And everything stopped. Everything stopped, and I have very rarely tapped back in. I've been put, like you say, you've been put in certain places, and you are where you're meant to be. I've been put in certain places where I've ended up having to do something, or something's come through me and it's helped someone tremendously, but I haven't yet wanted to open the doors like you have and welcome it yet, because I feel that there's other things I needed to do. And a lot of people out there feel quite ungrounded when this happens to them, because first people they want to tell is the family, and they're like, and if the family is doubtful, it can make you feel incredibly lonely. I was lucky that they didn't, but with my family. But so obviously we're Yorkshire, up in Yorkshire. I'm originally from Devon, but I've lived in Yorkshire since I was 7, so kind of I'm a bit of both. In Yorkshire, there's a lot of spiritualist women. There's a lot of women out there doing readings. There's not that many men. And how have more people warmed to you because you are a man? Has that been an advantage for you in any way? Because you've got a very trusting energy and personality. It's a very unusually warm kind of spiritualist energy when you come to meet you, and you're very like honest and flat out when you talk. Have you found that to be an advantage for you? Have you helped other people wake up because you're quite just a normal Yorkshire guy and you've got this other side to you? Has that helped you in some way?
I think in many respects, possibly yes, although I've not really sat down and thought about it, Nat. But you know what? It's like being honest and truthful to people is the connection, and many times in readings, you'll make this soul connection with another human. And honestly, that moment when you make that soul connection with someone, you never forget it, And I've always been, I suppose, my personality characteristic traits is to be honest to a fault in many respects. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm no way perfect. But when we're dealing with people, and I learned this through my salesman days, the moment I started to become myself, to become my true personality, and to deal with people on a human level and on an honest and truthful level, the whole world begins to change around you. And I just want to pick up on a point that you mentioned about your Reiki and the channeling and stuff that you've received. And a lot of people are going into Reiki and finding this fact, because what we're doing is we're opening up the channel. It's all the same thing. It's all the spiritual energy that we're actually becoming attuned to. And right now, in this massive spiritual awakening that's going on, what's happening is the dimensional barriers are beginning to thin. They're beginning to dissipate and disappear. So what's happening is that more and more people are picking up on stuff, and suddenly getting information. And then they're doing Reiki on somebody, and all of a sudden somebody's grandma comes through, just like it did, with you. And they don't know what to do with it. And it's like, oh my God. And it can be quite frightening. It can be quite a shock. And I always say, though, that the spirit will never give you more than what you can handle. Okay, because they don't want to frighten us. They don't want to do that to us. But we all have to awaken in different ways. And honestly, if my awakening had come with me seeing a full-on spirit figure in the bedroom at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd have been out of there. Yeah. So my awakening came in a group of people. Yeah, they put me into a group of people, and it was like, right, you're going to get your kick up the backside now, son. Yeah, which I did. But yeah, it's like allowing that to grow within us, taking it a step at a time, but being guided by your own intuition. So follow the intuition and your sentience. I work on 3 channels at the moment, Nat. Sentience didn't come to me until about 5-6 years ago. And a new guide came into me, a new spirit guide, and it was a female guide. It was the first female guide that I'd ever worked with. And she was brilliant. I won't tell you what she was. I'll just say that she wasn't human. But my giddy aunt, she was amazing. And she brought sentience to me. Now, this was in one of our psychic evenings that we hold at the centre. We're doing them online at the moment, by the way. We can't run them from the centre at the minute. But I was given a message by another great medium, Adrian Clark, and he said to me, 2 Yorkshire blokes in the middle of this public demonstration, and he said to me, "Oh, you're going to get in touch with your feminine side, yeah?" And I'm thinking, "Oh, what are people going to think to that one then?" You know. And I think Anne made a funny comment about, well, don't start trying on the clothes or something. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I just want to say that for me, that was kind of, what do you mean? You know, it was another kind of one of those moments where I wish the ground would have opened up, really. But that was probably a few months before this new guide came into work with me. And after that, I completely understood what that message was all about, because that took me into a totally different dimension. Now, you asked a question about, has it made me more approachable? I can't honestly answer that one. I presume I would have to ask people about it, you know. But if I say I feel more comfortable within my own skin, and this spiritual thing, we're constantly evolving and changing, you know. And what we perhaps believed in last year, or even last month, or even 3 days ago, might be completely different today, because we are evolving all the time. Yeah. So I hope people understand that don't be frightened by it, because what's happening now is the veil is thinning. It's becoming a point, and my guides have said this, and other sources from all over the world have said this for many years, that the awakening will come. And when that awakening comes, the veil between the worlds will begin to get thinner and thinner, to a point where we will become fully accepting of the extra dimensions that exist around us. And thank goodness that science is now backing us up a little bit on that one through quantum physics, you know, because we've said it for years. And you recommended a book to me, and I can't never remember the guy. Hazrat, you probably know what I'm talking about.
Do you know what? I can't remember the guy's. I don't know his name, but Music is Life is the book, which is
it's wonderful. Yeah. And he kind of said that, you know, and we say this all the time in spiritual circles, that spirit say it first, and then science discovers it. Yes. Yeah. And then it's a major discovery, then it's a major scientific discovery. But the spiritual people have been saying this for years, you know, but we're all kind of tinfoil hat wearers until we can actually prove that in a lab or under some kind of controlled conditions, which I completely understand, because some people, you know, like me, they get a kick up the bum for the, you know, to go and do it. Some people have to find that through the scientific channel, through the political channel, through whatever walk of life we are in. We're all progressing towards a higher level of consciousness.
Yeah, we are. And there's you know, there's a lot of people out there right now that are questioning the reality that we live in for many reasons. And I was just saying to you before we came on, I've started to, when people say about alternative news and conspiracy theories, I call it the Rubik's news. It's basically the Rubik's is in the Rubik's Cube. Not many people can figure it out. Very few people can figure it out in this Rubik's news that we have at the moment. And it's everyone's trying to figure out their own version of something. And it's a very destabilizing place to be in at the moment, because what we once thought was solid and what we once thought was accurate and what we once had our trust in has been broken down by ourselves, by our own deconstructions, by other news coming in, by other people's opinions, by the media. Everywhere we're looking now, we're destabilized in some way. And this is why I think, why I know that spiritualists for many years have always said that, when we close our eyes, that's our home. We don't need a passport. We don't need to go and find ourselves in Australia or around the world trip. We close our eyes and we're home. It's how comfortable you are sitting with yourself when you close your eyes, and with the meditation, like what's inside of you, what needs to be dealt with. Because some people, when they close their eyes, they're terrified because there's a silence in there that they're not used to listening to. And in there, the emotions that they've been avoiding. And a lot of people have trusted in the outside world more than they trust on the inside world. And what we're being told now is to go in and sit with that and go into our vulnerableness and into our awkwardness and really get to know ourselves, because this is the safe place. This is where our truth comes from. And, you can feel solid and certain with something when you really do start to understand yourself, because you know what your triggers are and you can find more of a trust within yourself. But one thing I wanted to mention today is, and somebody said to me, and it was a great sentence. So when I was like you, when I was younger, I went to church with my mum and dad. There were no other babysitters. It was, she's coming to church with us. That's it. Wasn't interested. I went to Sunday school, and I always say it was for the free orange juice and the free biscuits. But other than that, wasn't interested. When I was like 12 or 13, I'd made the decision that I was no longer going to church and I could stay home on Sunday mornings. And I had no interest in God, had no interest in any faith. I was just like, if there is a God, he's a bit of a dick, because look at the state of the world. That was my kind of arrogant perspective, had no other understanding. And I carried that with me for some time. And then I, as they say, woke up spiritually at 2009. I was always into like kind of The Secret, looking at different things and looking at aliens. And I've always been obsessed with that kind of stuff. But I wasn't certain with anything. But then spiritually kind of waking up when I was 2009. And I started to realize that there was more out there. And then obviously having this experience and that I've mentioned. And there's this real development of trust within myself that I had to connect with. I had to start thinking, well, there's things outside of me right now that are really questionable, that are really strange. And I have to keep questioning things to keep finding the answers. But the questions can lead us into a very confusing place, because the more questions you ask, the more the chance there is that you know nothing, which is very uncertain. But one thing I've realized more than not in the last, I would say, 6 years of my life, when I've looked at it properly, is take the spiritual side of it out and take the magical side and take the science out. And I'm like, there's just me left. If I take all of that away, what's truly worked for me in my times, because little bits of all of those three have worked for me, but what has truly worked for me, and it's the trust that I've had within myself and my own intuition, and that's grown. And then I look back and I thought, well, if when I've given up, when I've truly surrendered, and I've been like, you get to a point in life where you're like, oh, I can't take this anymore. I've like handed it over. And I specifically remember saying to God, just being like, if you do exist, mate, just take this one. I don't know what to do. I'll do whatever you want. But I honestly, I'm done. I'm done. And this was with drugs. And I'm like, I'm done. And I managed to stay off drugs. The same thing was with, and I had another experience in order to get me there, but that helped. Same thing with alcohol. The same thing with really unhealthy kind of sexual connections and relationships. The same thing with social media. Whenever I have given up and not needed to rely on science, spirituality, or any other story, I've just connected and said, please, I need help on this one. And I've surrendered, truly surrendered. There's this faith that has come within me that's allowed me to have discipline. And it's a faith in God and a faith in that there's something more than me. I don't know entirely what that is, but I know it's greater than I am, and that I have to step out of my own way and move into a space where I'm being guided and taught by something that is greater than me. And that doesn't require any belief in science or spirituality or anything. It's just a belief in myself that whatever's going to come, I'm going to be able to handle. And it's not that belief in God that I have now is unshakable, because it's proven to me every time when I've needed help, those times when I've surrendered have worked the best for me. It's not about being spiritual or having some kind of ceremony or anything major. You have to make sure you meditate. You do obviously meditate, but it's not about all of that stuff. It's about yourself and that connection to yourself. Because if you didn't trust yourself, really, if you didn't really know your own sanity, these messages coming to you, you wouldn't be delivering them to other people. You'd be going insane, but you've built up a level of deep trust within yourself to be able to do this work in the way that you do. So you can be that grounded light, and you can be that space for other people to find their solace in as well. And I feel like, do you get much resistance between, because this is really confusing at the moment, religion, spirituality, science, and God? Do you feel like these differences between these are causing problems on the planet at the moment, or is it the lack of trust within ourselves that's the problem?
It's a very good question, actually, because we seem to love division, don't we, human beings? Why do we love division? Everything's got to be labelled. And, I always say to people, when I get an official form from the council or something, and it says, what is your ethnicity and all this stuff? And then it says other. So I always put in other, and I put a divine light in human form. Yeah. And I'd love to see people's faces when they actually read that.
I need to start doing.
And because that's exactly what we are,
Yeah.
At our kind of utmost level, we are divine light. And you can stick whatever label you want on someone, And to me, this brings the whole ism thing into question, this ism, that ism, as John Lennon would say in one of his songs, Give Peace a Chance. Ism, ism, ism. Yeah. We put isms onto something. We are divine light, and that's what we are, Nat. And we love to partition things, because it's almost like we have to do this to recognize something. But the more that you go within, and it is a scary place, you're absolutely right. Actually going within and going into that silence. And you and I know from working with sound that silence, as on your wonderful interview the other day with Jonathan Goldman and his lovely wife, talked about silence. Yes, silence is so important because you know what? That everything's in that silence. Everything's in that silence. Everything is in that moment, because that moment is all that exists. This, what we see around us, is a construct. It's actually a construct. It's an illusion, but we live in a reality, in what we deem or perceive as reality. But when we go into that silence, what we're actually doing is we're stepping into God. Okay? We are actually becoming the part of God that we carry with us in this physical existence. And that is mind-blowing. If we could all learn to discover that within us, we could all learn to retreat into that space. And we know this happens through meditation. This can also happen through many other channels. Music and sound is another great channel for that to happen. But when we go into the heart space, because I'm a big kind of thing going on with the heart and mind at the moment, and we're talking about separating things out. What we're doing is we're separating the heart from the mind. We're all very guilty of that through these very current times, of just taking things at face value. Instead of listening to what's going on in here, because this is our guide, and as you quite rightly said, when you need help, you go into that space. Yeah, because that's where the help is. It's not out there. It is. We can help each other. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to say that wrongly. We're here to help each other. But where the truth is and where the real connection is, it's within. Bearing in mind that all human beings are connected anyway. So we're not actually individuals, really. We look like we are, but we're not. Although some people would disagree with that, say, well, I don't want to be connected to him or connected to her, But at base level, at spiritual level, we are all connected. But we are living individual reality on this planet. Because we've chosen to learn that. We've chosen to come here. That's a big thing that a lot of people won't like to hear, but we've actually chosen to live this life. Okay, and I could talk for hours on that and probably get shot down for it, but I won't. But it's kind of, you're absolutely right. Go within. That's the message right now. Is there's so much misinformation out there now, so many untruths, that we no longer know where to go for the truth. We're completely confused. And this is where we find the truth. Yeah. So don't be afraid. And people say, oh, I can't meditate. It's people's perception of meditation.
Yeah, I used to say that all the time. Can't meditate. I'm like, yes, you can. You just weren't trying.
Yeah. Oh,
like
you just
sitting down and daily.
Yeah. It's like there's Buddha behind me there doing the full-on meditation pose. Yeah.
Mm.
We don't have to meditate like Buddha. We don't have to be like that. Meditation literally can be, even a daydream can be meditation, by the way. That when you just allow your thoughts to go inwards rather than outwards, that is meditation. And on our corporate stuff, we teach like 2-minute meditation, 1-minute meditation. You know, in the busy corporate world, how do you meditate in a busy corporate world? Well, you can do it by just doing it a minute. And you know what? The yoga thing, it's focusing on the breath. Okay, the breath is so important.
Yeah.
And that focus, the focus of the breath, is the meditation. Okay, it's the very thing which gives us life, and the very thing, sadly, the air around us, that certain things are telling us now that it's poison. Actually, stop breathing the air around you; it's poison. No, the air gives us life, and the air connects us to that God source. I hope that makes sense. Sometimes I talk and I don't even know whether I'm making sense, but.
So I get on stage sometimes and talk, and I've got no idea what I've said when I've got after stood back down, and people are like, "Oh my God, you know when you said," and I'm like, "No, I can't." No idea what I just said to you. But that's the thing when, you know, with these shows, I don't plan anything other than the date and the time, and I'll ask people to join me, and people are like, "Oh, can you send me the questions beforehand?" I'm like, no chance, no way. I don't want to pre-plan anything. If you can't talk to me on air just as a normal human being, then you're not the right kind of guest for me, because there is no planning. And sometimes when somebody's talking, I'll make a little note for the next question, but that's as much as I'll plan anything. Because, you know, life, that we try to plan so much. We try to have, like, and I don't have any goals other than I'd like to visit every country in the world if I can. Other than that, I don't have any specific goals. And people are like, oh, but you've got business. What's your 5-year plan? And I'm like, what's your 5-year plan? What were you doing 5 years ago? Did you know you were going to be here today? Because I didn't. Like, it's not that way. And it's what we need to do is stop planning everything. Stop putting the goals out there. Stop putting this, I'm going to do this and this and this. How about just doing now? How about just being here now, like Ram Dass said, being here now and being okay with exactly what you've got. I'm single, I'm not loaded, I'm living at home with my parents, and I'm really happy. I could want a boyfriend. I'd love a little bit more money. It'd be really nice to have my own house. I don't have them right now, but I'm really happy. I'm in the middle of a global pandemic. I'm still happy. You know, and there's things, because I've learned to be here now with myself, knowing that anything can change at any moment. But that also doesn't mean I'm super spiritual, because some days I still have days where I'm like, oh, I'm well overwhelmed today. I need to slow down. We're not here to get it right all the time. And somebody said to me, which I love him for saying this, because it was one of the best things I think I've ever heard. And it was very recent in November. And he said, and let me get this right. He said, the idea is we need to forget about trying to be balanced all the time. Balanced is a very spiritual word. He said, the idea is to become perfectly okay with being perpetually overwhelmed with whatever God wants to put your way. If you can handle the overwhelm as well as you can, you will handle life, because it's always going to be there in that way. You're always going to have this and then that and then this, but that's life. And if you can, like, some people are scared of being their biggest, best versions of themselves. You know, like there'll be people listening when they're listening back on this, and they'll be like, I'm getting messages as well, you know, but I didn't do anything. That sentence means that become overwhelmed, allow that spirit in, become whatever it is you're meant to be in that moment, and be okay with that. And I'm still getting okay with having spirit showing up and doing different things. I haven't made it a full part of my life yet, but I'm slowly, the more I deal in sound, as you know, the more you deal with sound, it kind of seeps in. I'm noticing I'm very practical in the sense of, and people around me notice this all the time. I'll say something and then it'll show up, and I'm not manifesting. This is another thing I want to put out there for anybody spiritually listening or looking to try and get more in their life. my life really started taking shape when I stopped trying to manifest everything.
Yeah.
Manifesting is possible, but it comes from a very serious place, ego and lack. And when we're constantly in this place of trying to manifest the right boyfriend or the right money or the right thing, we're constantly taking ourselves out of the moment, and we're not here. And it took the pressure off. I'm like, I'm not manifesting shit. If it needs to come to me, then I will be in a place where it'll come to me. If it doesn't come to me, then it won't. And it might not be the right time. And it took all the pressure off. Really just was like,
Yeah.
I don't need anything apart from what I've got here right now. Like you said, the air, the water, and to make sure I've got tea on the table at 6.
Yeah.
It's a Yorkshire thing. I think everyone's tea at 6. But, you know, that is enough. What else do I need today?
Yeah.
It's this gratefulness for the moment that you're in that's really important.
Absolutely. And we have a lovely friend who is a mindfulness expert, and, you know, I've learned a great deal from her through that. And, you know, when you come to learn that the present moment is all that there is, everything exists in the present moment. You see, we see life far too kind of almost one-dimensionally of we're born, we kind of live, and then we die. Yeah. That's just a very small facet of a certain experience that our spirit, has chosen to do. Because when our time is up on earth, well, we go back to spirit form, we go back to light form. Yeah. And I would love for everybody on the whole planet to understand that right now, that if you're going to die from whatever it is that you're going to die from, you're going to die from it. You know, it's like, it's not, you know, you can try and stop it, but it's not going to happen. The moment of birth is timed to perfect spiritual precision, and the moment of death is timed to perfect spiritual precision also. And what we do in between that is entirely up to us and what we've chosen to do with it. So I have a big problem with manifestation, Nat. I am a life path person. And I'm not saying that my truth is anybody else's truth. I would never be so arrogant to say that. But I believe in my life path, and this is maybe just what I've chosen, is that from the moment I was born on this planet to the moment I'm going to pass, that every single moment I planned out. Okay. I drew my own map from the world of spirit, or call it whatever you want, and I will follow that map, and I'll go on deviations. Yeah. But you know what? I'll always come back to the same point. And I liken it, because I ran my own computer maintenance business for a long number of years, got into computers, and realized that I'm going back. This is a bit of history for you. CDs. Okay. Imagine a CD. Yeah.
Yeah.
Games used to come on CDs. Now it's all online, of course. And this is like a book. If you imagine a book, that there's a beginning and an end, and it's all contained in that thing that you've got in the palm of your hand. The whole story is contained from beginning to end, and the whole alternate pathways that you can take are all in there, but you will still arrive at the same point at the end. Okay. And it's up to you whichever pathway you want to take, but you'll find that some pathways are blocked and some pathways are open.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop you wanting to explore them. So that's a big, deep thing. That may be my reality. That may be my reality. I'm not saying that's everybody's reality. But, you know, and you mentioned The Secret, didn't you? And I don't want to diss anything, because we all have our own.
I think a lot of people start there, don't they? For me, it was like a little like, oh, this is interesting. But I look back now and I'm like, that was nothing in comparison to what I know now.
Yeah, it's like we can all be rich. Well, perhaps we can all be rich, but perhaps we've actually chosen not to be rich because we've got a certain experience that we need to go through.
Yeah.
You know, and so like you say, the message is there is a pathway, but don't be too massively concerned about where that's actually going, because you will go there anyway. Yeah. And whatever we've chosen to experience, we will experience. And living on planet Earth is not an easy ride, you know, and there are some horrendous things that happen on this planet, as we all know. But in the grander spiritual sense, when we open up to the higher wisdom, we begin to learn to understand why these things happen, because everybody's question is, how can God let such a thing happen? You know, that's a massive question. And one I certainly can't answer. You know, I have my own theories on that, but I'm certainly not going to sit here and try and answer that one. But I have a better understanding of it now than I did, say, 20, 30 years ago. And that understanding has brought me a much better way of handling that. You know,
have you ever read the book Conversations with God by Neale Donald Walsch?
I haven't, no, but I've heard of it.
Okay, out of most people call me a little spiritual librarian. I'm always reading, and I can always recommend it. But I think I've known you for like 2-3 months, and I've already recommended you like 3 books.
I'm going to say I'm getting that. I'm picking that up from you now.
Yeah, and you said to me in my reading, you said, Nat, you need to stop reading. Stop reading in my reading. I was like, okay, yeah. And since then, I've like found loads of books that I want to read, and I'm like, no, I'm meant to stop reading. So
don't do if that's what you feel you're drawn to, keep at it.
Well, they just come, and I'm just like, oh my God, and flick through them. But the Conversations with God changed my life, and I say this with such I'm so grateful I got this book. And for me, when people say, oh, what's your favorite book? You must have read loads. You must have loads. And I'm like, I've got one favorite book, and it's Conversations with God by Neale Donald Walsch. All of the others are amazing, but this one, there's actually 3 of them, which I got the other 2 after I read the first one. But I actually listened to the first one. And what happened was, and the reason why I listened to it is because I was going online and it was when Audible just came out, not long after Audible coming out. And I got Audible, and I was trying to get a particular book that I was typing in, and I knew it was on Audible because I'd seen it on a bus stop going past, and it was like available on Audible. So I'm like, right, I'm typing it in, it wouldn't come up, and I forgot what the book was now. But this Conversations with God came up, which was nothing to do with the title, and I'm like, no, don't what I want. Anyway, I carried on typing it in, it kept coming up, so I left it. And then I went to see, I think I went to see someone, and they said, oh, it's like having a conversation with God. And I'm like, I've heard that today somewhere else. And then I heard it, and then I went back on Audible. I thought, oh, that's where I'm meant to do. I'm meant to get this book. I'm going to try again. And this book just kept coming on Audible up. And I'm just like, I don't want this book. And then something was like, get this book. I'm like, okay. Got the book, listened to it. And it's like an audio, it's like a play, because you have the author talking. And then he has 2 characters, and they both play God, and one is a male and one is a female. But Conversations with God and how he now understands God to be, and the humor that's in this book, and the enlightening, pages, and the part of it that really, it just makes me feel like I'm at home. It's like an understanding. It's like how we've got religion so wrong, how we have really got this upside down and inside out. This is just shakes it, and it's just like, now read it. And you're like, I listened to it, and I was just like, and it's one of the things, he said commandments. This is the 10 commandments. He says, I'm not commanding you to do anything. These are 10 things that you could do that might help you to live here on earth in a better way. But it's up to you whether you do them. And it was that I was just like, oh, it's so powerful. It was more of a choice rather than a forced, this must be, and this is the only way, and this is why. And because I read none of that. This was like, this is a choice. You need to make that choice because you're here. If you make that choice, it could maybe work out better for you. And since that book, my life changed. And I often listen to it, and it's like, I could cry sometimes when I listen to it because it's so homely. It just makes such a difference. But that's where the faith came from.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend that. We've got a comment. Oh, Dina. Sorry. Hi. Dina's. Oh, she's this Dina lady, Dina Myers. Is it Deanna? Dina. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but you always make comments. So I just want to say hello. Thank you very much. She put, love those books. I was blown away when I've seen them myself in the film version too. The Girl on the Bus. I don't actually know. I haven't seen the film version. Is there a film version of Conversations with God? There you go.
Sounds interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very good. So if somebody's out there and they're either having little messages or they're receiving things or they just have been thinking about having a reading for some time, tell us more about kind of what approach they should take. Obviously that you can reach out to you underneath, which is all there. And I've only put your details there for people to kind of go and stalk you, basically. But if someone's having this thought now, so exactly, someone's having a thought about getting messages themselves, what would your advice be to that person?
Okay. Number one, accept them. Yeah. Don't be frightened of them. Fear, we've got too much fear in the world right now. Let's not add to it. Welcome it, embrace it. But do seek out someone who can help you with that, to hopefully offer their experience and assistance and guidance in that respect. We do hold psychic development courses at our centre, and we meet some wonderful, amazing people from all walks of life who come to us saying, oh, I've had this experience, or I feel as though I'm psychic, but I'm really not sure what to do with it, or, you know, so many different experiences. And then once we begin to develop that and open that up, it becomes a little less scary, because a lot of people are very concerned about how to control it. You know, what do I do with it? How? And I was there right at the beginning, as I mentioned earlier in the interview. What, you know, how is this going to affect my life? And once we understand that we can control it, we can bring it within us, we can learn for it to be part of us, and to turn that on and off like a tap, you know, that spirit are very much wanting to work with us. They don't want to work against us or frighten us or push us into something that we're not. Well, actually, they do. I'll take that back.
Yeah, I was going to take that bit back.
They will push us into things that we feel uncomfortable with, but only at the time. Yeah. And then they'll help us to gain a better understanding of why that had to happen. So for anybody who's seeking, searching, fearful, check out anyone around you who might be able to help with those experiences. Yeah, talk to somebody, book yourself. I mean, the trouble is at the moment we're locked down and we can't open our centre up and invite all these wonderful human beings in. I am actually looking to run a little psychic group online, all being well. But my kind of beef with that a little bit is that there are times when we have to be within the presence of another human being, because we talk about auras and we learn how to work with the auric field, the energy field around us all. Weirdly enough, I've been noticing around my screen today, there's a green aura around this this screen. I've never seen that before.
Do you know what? It's really weird. So, you know, when you did my reading and you said to me, you're going to start seeing things now and you've got to trust them. So when I was in Devon and I did the whole kind of scooping around Devon and going to see different people, and I went to Dartmoor, which is where I used to play when I was a kid, and we bumped into this couple. I was walking up this hill and we bumped into this couple, and as my friend's talking to me, they'd be like the farmers from next door. I'm looking above this woman, and you know, like, you know, when there's petrol on the floor, and it's like a rainbow on the floor. There was that, but it was see-through above this woman's head next to this tree. And I'm looking and I'm like, and the day before, this is the strangest day before, I was on a 2-hour journey from one end, from Cornwall to Devon. I saw 7 rainbows in 2 hours. And I was like, and I saw 2 of them were double rainbows. So that was 4. And then I saw 2 2 rainbows within different clouds, and then a rainbow on its own. And I'm like, what the hell? And then the day after, I saw the oil rainbow above this woman's head next to the tree. And again, like about 20 minutes later, as well, as we were walking away. And there is more coming through. There are things to be seen. There's definitely something happening, and the veil is, like you say, is lifting dramatically. But there's these little little like sparks I'm getting as well as I'm talking to you around here.
Well, one thing, you know, in the very first lockdown, when we actually did lock down and everything went quiet for about 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And there were hardly any cars on the roads.
Beautiful time.
The deer were coming out of the woods. The crows were dancing in the middle of the main roads and things, and it was wonderful. And that to me was a massive spiritual moment where spirit was saying, right, okay, we are going to bring you to an absolute standstill. We're going to bring you to that silence, that silence that we've talked about. And we were out on one of our authorised walks, and it's very, very gracious of them, I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you for the walk.
For allowing us to keep walking out there. And and we went on this walk, and my wife suddenly, you remember Nat, the sky for weeks, it seemed, was beautiful, blue and clear.
Stunning. It was so beautiful.
And if you believe in the chemtrail thing, there was none. There were no chemtrails.
Yeah.
It was the bluest, clearest sky I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And my wife looked up to it, and I was nebbing over a fence. There's a good word for you, nebbing. Nebbing over a fence, yeah. And by the way, my eldest son's got a Yorkshire dialect page on Facebook, so I'm just going to plug that for him.
Perfect. Yeah, you have to give me the thing to have a look at it.
Check that one out. There's some good stuff on there. But she looked up at the sky. She says, "Oh my God," she says, "can you see this?" And I said, "See what?" She says, "Just look up at the sky." And she says, "Is it my eyes, or can you see lots of little sparkles?" And I looked up, and I, you know, like your eyes take a while to get used to something, don't they? And I looked up, and I said, "Oh my God, yeah, I can see them all. Little shimmery sparkles all in the sky."
Yeah.
And so we had a shared experience there. But many months later, I met a lovely lady, and she came to me for a reading. And she said in the reading, she says, "You know what? I saw this thing in lockdown." She says, "I saw all this stuff going on in the sky." I said, "You'll never believe it." I said, "So did I, and so did my wife." Yeah. And I'm thinking, if we do ever find that space on this planet where we can stop this madness, as I call it, how much magic will come into our life? Yeah. A manifestation of physical phenomena and all sorts. And as we've talked about now, that veil is dissipating, you know, and it's very exciting when you actually sit and you think about it, and you get these waves of excitement, you know. Some days you get waves of despondency when you hear a comment about this, that, and the other going on, but then you get these waves of excitement, and that is the spiritual process that's going on. You see, the problem is we're all locked into this physical world, aren't we?
Yeah.
Well, many of us are. Thankfully, we're learning to raise ourselves above that. But so many are locked into the physical existence, and they don't feel or see or hear what is going on outside of this physical reality. And what is going on outside of this physical reality right now is this amazing spiritual process that is almost like embracing the whole of the world, the cosmos, humanity, you name it, putting their arms around us and going, "You know what? We've got you. We've got you. Yeah. You're with us, and we're with you." And sorry, I'm getting a bit emotional. Sorry. And they do this to me, and you've seen that. The beggars for it.
Around you like that.
They're absolute beggars for doing it to me, you know. And but it's just like the angelic message sounds very flippant when it comes through, but it means so much, and it is everything is going to be okay. Yeah. And that's from the angels. Everything is going to be okay. People won't believe that. They'll think I'm talking a load of cobblers. Yeah. But you know what? I believe that. And if we can take ourselves out of this 70, 80, 90 years on the planet kind of reality situation and realize that we are eternal divine beings of light rather than this physical body, and that once we leave this body behind, we're released from this body and we can continue our journey in our light form. We are eternal. There is no death. There is no judgmental God saying to us, you've been very naughty, I'm going to put you to death. How can God put God to death? Exactly. How does God destroy itself? You know?
Yeah. Crazy.
God will never destroy itself because it is all it is. Those are the words. God is, we are, everything is.
I am.
I am, exactly.
Yeah.
And so we've got to take ourselves away from this construct of physical reality, release ourselves from that. We can do that through meditation. We can take ourselves out of this timeline. Because whenever you've been in meditation, you might notice that time becomes irrelevant. Or you might have been in, say, a guided meditation and you come out of the meditation and think, oh my God, an hour's gone by. I didn't realize that, you know? Because that is the release for us. If we want to take a step out of reality, just go into meditation, go within. So for anybody who's seeking that, you'll see the signs just like you've seen that. You've seen the rainbows, okay? You'll see little things, little unusual things in your life, and you become drawn to something. And don't deny yourself being drawn to something. Don't fight it, because if you're drawn to something, you've got the feeling of being drawn to a book or a piece of music or a person or a pathway in life, wherever it might be. Don't go, oh, you know, yeah, whatever, it's not for me. Try it, go for it. Just give it a go, you know, because many times it's the right path. And that's how we should guide ourselves, not be told how to guide ourselves by some other force or person, but follow the guidance from within, because that is the truth and that's where you'll always find it.
I love that. Well, I think we'll end it there. That was beautiful space to end it on. I want to thank you so much for your time this morning. This is the first of 4 interviews we have with you. So we've got this one today, and then we've got you on Sunday, haven't we? We've got your Sunday Sound and Medicine. You're joining, you've got me and Lane talking, Lane Thompson talking sound and medicine. You are, but I got your email, by the way, yesterday with, it looks amazing. I was very happy with that. You were letting your network know that you were on I Am Sound, and I was very happy. It made me smile. It looked very professional as well. I was like, oh, this is my company. It's like, oh, it's lovely. And then you are with us again. When was the next dates? I can't remember. I should know this. I can't remember for now, but tune in on Sunday. So you are back to talk about sound and medicine on Sunday at 7 o'clock. Tonight, I have another show, and it's how to make a relationship great. I've got 3 couples that I know and love, and they are coming on board to talk about, you know, the awkwardness of relationships and how to maintain these tough times. And then tomorrow is a really deep one on the power of brotherhood and what it means to have a collective brotherhood. It's all men, all talking. There are people I admire, and it's a really good kind of grounding space for us to be in. So thank you so much, Jonathan. You are just an absolute gem. And if anybody wants a reading or to reach out, please do so. His details are underneath, and I can't wait to have you back on Sunday.
Thank you, Nat. Can I just very quickly say, I love the work that you do. The work that you do is amazing. You've been drawn into that. You've followed your heart, and you're unique, and that's wonderful. And it's been a great privilege to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. This is it's a strange old time, and I'm glad we've got the fellow Yorkshireman here doing your bit for Yorkshire. It just is so nice being here and realizing there's all these beautiful hearts in Yorkshire. And a lot of people, I think they forget that. I think we're all kind of quite tough, very friendly, but very tough. But there's a beautiful spiritual community here, and it's really, you're part of it, and it's amazing. The work you're doing is amazing.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone, we'll see you tonight at 7 o'clock. And if you want to reach out, please do. Underneath, go send him a message, let him know that you want a reading. He's amazing. I swear it's so good. And we'll see you all tonight. Ciao for now.